Hi.
Okay. Now we have 7. So I think we can call this meeting to order at 12:03. Do we need to say the pledge, or will we not do it for a special meeting?
Let's just go.
All right.
Don't mind.
All right. Well, the only thing that I have on this agenda is the resolution to allow video conferencing at our meetings in the event that the state of emergency is no longer in effect. And I believe the state of emergency currently expires at the end of the week. So we're getting this virtual meeting in a few days before the state of emergency expires. And the resolution, I don't know if everybody has a copy of the resolution that the attorney sent to us. I will just read it just in case. It's a resolution, whereas Public Officers Law Sections 102 and 103 allow for the use of video conferencing for attendance and participation of the members of the Guilderland Public Library Board of Trustees who are unable to attend the physical meeting, and whereas the physical presence of members of the board at meetings is a preferred practice, but it is understood that circumstances may periodically not allow that to occur. And whereas the use of video conferencing will support and foster the ability of members of the Board of Trustees to participate in board meetings when business, personal, or other reasons prevent them from being physically present for the meeting. And whereas Public Officers Law Section 104 requires adequate notice to the public if video conferencing will be used, locations of such sites, and the opportunity for the public to attend the meeting at any such site. It is hereby resolved that the Board of Trustees shall permit the use of video conferencing by members of the board when there is a reasonable justification for their inability to be physically present at a meeting of the board. A member of the board who will be absent from a meeting who wishes to utilize video conferencing shall notify the executive director and board president of that request. And then there are 2 options. Option 1 would be video conferencing will only be allowed for i.e. persons who are ill, persons deployed in the military, persons who are out of town, etc. Any request, but only once per fiscal year. Any requests must be reasonable and the appropriate notice must be able to be issued. Or if it is determined by the executive director and board president that video conferencing is justified and can be reasonably accomplished, arrangements shall be made and the appropriate public notice shall be issued. And I was suggesting that I would suggest that the second option be used, just because limiting only once per fiscal year seems a little bit arbitrary, especially in the time of COVID when there might be quarantines and who knows what. So that was just my suggestion. So does anyone have any comments about that?
I would second that.
I also agree.
Okay.
I would also agree with option 2.
Okay. So is there?
Yeah, I agree, but I have a question.
Okay.
Can I ask a question now? I still think I heard in there some of the language that we talked about at the last meeting about disclosing the remote location and making it available to the public. Did I hear that correctly? Is that still a condition of participating remotely, or did we find a resolution to
that? According to the attorney, it has to be part of the adequate public notice. I know that we give notice under our bylaws a week before the meeting. I know that within a week before the meeting, people's plans change. And also someone obviously can't anticipate being ill or being in quarantine or some other reason why they might be unavailable. So I interpret adequate notice as being, within 24 hours of the meeting. I don't think a week's notice would be required of specific locations, or, I mean, it wouldn't even necessarily be possible to give a specific location in a week before the meeting. I mean, how would someone know they're going to be ill, So that was my interpretation of it. So, but it wouldn't have to be specific locations a week before. So,
Okay, would it have to be a specific location at any point? I just want to make sure that everybody understands what this resolution is saying, because I do remember there was significant concern about that. I have that concern as well, and likely wouldn't use this option if I had to disclose my
How
location.
specific does the location have to be? I think I understand what Vanessa's saying. I was one of those people that had concerns just for multiple reasons, like not wanting people to know my full address. Do you have to provide like a whole street number and everything like that? Or can you give like a generalized,
You have to allow the
Guilderland?
public to attend from your house if you are
That was
going
the
to be
part I
doing
was
it from your
concerned about.
house.
Exactly.
Wasn't
It
there,
is part
wasn't
of the
there some,
public meeting.
yeah, wasn't there some discussion? I don't have it in front of me, but Kathy, I think in your discussions with Chris, there was some question as to whether or not that was viable and in fact made sense in light of the fact that if we go into executive session, the public is not invited to that. And I think she made some point about executive session. So we may have a conflict in the requirement of specific location versus the ability to have an executive session without the public attending. Now, you could always make the argument if we have an executive session and somebody's sitting in your house with you, you can ask them to leave. But there was that question that was raised.
If I recall, the example they used was you're going on vacation.
Yeah.
And I think the wording was, anybody who's on vacation with you, needs to leave the area, or you need to be able to go to somewhere that's private to continue with the executive session. What it comes down to is it's not a completely new option of being able to just remotely have a meeting. Public meeting law says if you're not physically there, wherever you are is attendable by the public and is considered a public location. You can step out of your hotel and go to a library. You can do something like that if you don't want to put your actual address in there, but it's not supposed to be I'd rather not come today. I'm just going to stay home and do it.
Right. Yeah. Well,
yeah, I think in the memo, the attorney had suggested that she suggested locations such as libraries, business conference rooms, activity rooms, would suffice. So I don't know, where,
That seems to be in conflict with the purpose, some of the interest in this option, right? If we're saying quarantine, injury, that sort of thing, I feel like those additional locations you just named are probably not actually an option for those uses. So I think there's still a mismatch between what we desire and need, or where the interest was, and what's actually allowable under open meeting laws currently.
So
Yeah, the other issue on this is, from a security perspective that I have some background in, I don't know that someone who's away from their house or on vacation wants to let the public know that I'm participating from here, because people can see that and then say, oh, these people are not home, so now I can go and, rob their house or something. That's an issue. Right? People who go on vacation and say, hello, you see me in Hawaii on Facebook. People see that, or on Twitter or something, and say, oh, they're not home. So that's a concern we need to just think about.
Well, that's always been there, and that's always been a concern. And I think what it comes down to is if you're not in a position to attend a board meeting, you're not in a position to attend a board meeting. This is an option to facilitate it in certain situations if you cannot be physically present, but I can't think of the last time we've had, consecutive board meetings with every member present. It just doesn't always happen.
Right.
And if it's something that you don't think you're going to be able to attend the majority of board meetings or a significant number of board meetings, you might need to reconsider whether or not you can serve on the board.
Okay, well, this resolution allows for remote participation under certain circumstances. So, you know, my interpretation, like I said, of notice, I don't think that the notice of specific locations would be required to be disclosed a week in advance. I would say adequate notice would be 24 hours before the meeting. So, I mean, and I kind of had this question for the attorney about COVID quarantine and the technical right of the public to attend a meeting in a remote in a private residence that's under quarantine. And she said, well, you know, they could make that choice to come into you know, expose themselves to COVID, but
No,
to me that doesn't make any sense because
that's not a good answer.
no, it's not, because COVID doesn't end at your front door. You know, somebody who gets COVID at your house and goes off and gives it to 10 other people, you know, it's not, you know, that's, I mean, I think that's a real issue, you know, and
I wouldn't argue that with you, but again, this comes down to, this is state law and we can't fix state law in this meeting. All we're going to do is provide for a particular option that certain people can use in
Right.
certain scenarios. And that's the best we can accomplish right here.
Yeah, I think we should approve this resolution. And
all right, well, is there a motion to approve the resolution as stated with option 2?
I'll make that motion.
I second it.
Andy? All right, and everybody who's in favor of passing the resolution, please signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is anyone opposed? All right, it passes unanimously at 12:15. Okay, so that was the only business on the agenda. Unless anybody had anything else they wanted to discuss, I think I don't think we had anything else on our agenda other than this resolution.
Nothing to discuss here. I don't know if somebody monitors the cafe distro. I don't know if I emailed the right people, but
Yes.
I had somebody who was interested in looking at the space or being a vendor. If someone, that doesn't have to be discussed here, but just
Oh, that's great.
someone could take a look at that, that would be really great.
That's
I'll
great.
send you
Just
an
to answer
email
that.
back.
Yeah, I think Tim and Peter were going to be working on revamping that document that you're looking for, basically, from what we had today. So I don't know that that's complete yet.
Like a
It
vendor
is not.
application.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the whole contract process. So I
Yeah,
think
no
that's
worries.
probably
If
why
there's
nobody
just somebody I can like kind of direct her to just to talk it through so she can, because I don't have that information. So send her your way.
Yeah,
All right. Thank you.
thanks.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I think we
Hey, do we
can.
have a special meeting? I'm sorry, a design meeting. Is there a separate link to that? I didn't get that.
It's the same link. So we're just going to ask board members who don't want to stay to just drop off. So
Okay, all right, oh, very well, thanks.
Okay, I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I second it.
All right.
Who seconded?
Alish
All right.
or Vanessa, we tied.
All right. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
All right. Anyone
Aye.
opposed? All right. We are unanimously adjourned at 12:17. Thank you all for attending.
Have fun.
Best meeting ever.
thanks, everybody.
Yeah, sorry for all the questions, Kathy, I wasn't opposed to it. I just really wanted people to understand that it probably wasn't giving permission for them to do what they wanted to do. It's like a very narrow sort of application.
Yes, I know. It's challenging. You know, I think that there was some proposed legislation to change that, but I don't think it went anywhere. I think some of the maybe towns that had less connectivity and video uh, ability didn't want to, because I think the new legislation allowed for remote participation by members of the public as well.
Oh,
So I think that was more just like for public hearings, you know, for towns and villages and that sort of thing. So,
that makes sense.
but it would have done away with the remote location provision, which is kind of a anachronistic thing in a way. But I'm not sure, you know, like I said, I don't think it went anywhere. I don't think it was part of the budget. So, all right. So Megan, I guess we are now in the design committee phase of this meeting.
Excellent. Welcome. All right. I don't have a huge agenda today, but I do have a few things to go over. So if you just give me one moment, I will share my screen. So it's springtime, and following our last few committee meetings, we needed to make final selections and order our exterior site furniture, so we will have it for the summer season. So we completed the order for the exterior planter, which will go in the plaza in front of the Tawasenta room, adjacent to the stair that goes up to the upper level parking lot.
Right by the board meeting room.
Right by the board meeting room. So you'll all be able to see it soon.
Nice.
We've ordered 2 of these pedestal base, so they're fixed to the concrete pad tables that have 3 benches and then 1 open spot for an ADA accessible station. So those are ordered for this area in the color green, as we had discussed. We also ordered them with umbrellas to provide some shading while we determine if we can do something better and more permanently installed in this area. But we thought we'll start them out here in this front area and then potentially move them to the back where there are some sunnier spots versus shady spots. So we think they'll get used in either the front or the rear plaza locations. We also ordered 5 of these benches for the addition area for outside the butterfly garden and along that pathway to the addition. We ordered 2 rectangular picnic tables and 2 round tables. One of the picnic tables has the ADA accessible end extension so that someone in a wheelchair or with a stroller can pull up to the table. And then I coordinated with the local vendor, Dutch Country Connections, who has provided some of the Adirondack chairs that are out in this rear plaza space. They've got some additional ones ready to go. So Lou and Tim are going to, when they need a field trip, go take a ride and pick up 5 additional chairs and 1 of these bench units.
We're waiting for the ice cream shop across the street to open.
Very wise.
For the season. Megan, what's the material of the Adirondack furniture?
It's the Hollywood is not the right term, but it's the composite material.
The composite. Okay.
It doesn't need the perpetual maintenance as the teak does.
So I want to, without opening a 2-hour can of worms, I just want to ask, they have a ton of colors down there. And does anyone have any thoughts or prohibitions they would like to mention? I mean, I don't think we're going to get hot pink and lime green. I think things that like Megan is showing here seem pretty reasonable.
Right.
But
All the new
any
tables are
thoughts?
coming in the green, the green metal color.
Okay. Good to know before we go down there. So good, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, my instinct would be to be something in that color family of the top of the building.
Oh, that's nice.
I do think, I mean, anything natural obviously is fine, but I think it gets a little lost on the patio. And without picking something that's like super bright, that could be a nice color, but I don't know what they have there. I'm sure you'll do great, Tim, though.
Thank you.
And we'll be happy with whatever you get.
That's what I always tell my wife, you know, I'm like, whatever rug you want, it's, I'm just gonna walk on it.
Megan, the benches, the like park benches,
Yes.
those are going on still going on concrete pads, or how do those get?
So we were going to do, because these are just going to be drop shipped to the library. My thought was to have Lou or the maintenance staff get the little concrete, like 1-inch
Pavers?
tall or 2-inch tall paver blocks and mount
Okay.
them like that, because I know this looks very unlevel here in the photo, so it'll be not challenging, but they'll have to give some consideration to locating the benches in flat spots.
Okay, because one thing I did want to mention, I was in the library over the weekend, which was really fun, and my son and I really liked seeing how the library is coming to life with the furnishings and things. But looking out the window to the butterfly garden, there was a considerable amount of standing water and not in the retention area. So I immediately was like, eek, like, would the benches sink, or would people be able to even get out there? Obviously, people aren't going to sit outside if the conditions won't let them. But I was a little concerned about that grassy area.
Tim had put the water drainage issue on my radar. It was back in February when it was still frozen. So I want to have our site engineer come out now that the ground is thawed and have them review the topography and see if anything else needs to be done to make sure that we are draining that area and not having.
Yeah, it
standing
did
water.
not appear to be draining.
Yep. So Megan, the photo you're showing, to follow up on Vanessa's concern, this never occurred to me till today when I saw this photo, but should we, you know, I mean, we could do this by going to Lowe's, but should we put some little border fence around that drainage ditch that we can see at the right-hand side of the photo?
You can. There are some plantings around it that are supposed to grow in and sort of make a natural barrier, but in the short term, it might not be a bad idea just to keep little ones from.
Yeah.
Because I know little ones love to run down slopes.
Yep. We'll take care of that rather than, you know, getting a fence out of the design budget.
All right. And then the other item was replacing the edging at the rear plaza because that metal edging has come out over the past 20 years. It's not settled, and with then the changes of the new concrete pads, it's been a little bit upset. So I reached out to the landscaper and asked what their recommendation was for edging of this kind, knowing that we've got the pavers that have been there for 2 decades now as well. They recommended replacing that metal edging in kind in terms of durability and lifespan. And
Megan, can you help me orient myself of what this picture is?
this is the site, this is the library building, this is the rear plaza, that round seating area, this round area.
Got it. I had inverted it in my head and thought the slash is the building.
This slash is the
Yeah.
existing building.
Okay.
And that's how you
All
see
right,
it.
I got you now. Thank you.
Oh, and you and I had discussed this with Kathy about updating that metal
Yep.
edge because it was sort of sticking out like
Yeah,
spears.
it's jagged. Yeah.
So their recommendation was to replace that with another piece of steel for $1,456, which seemed like probably the best option, knowing that you got 20 years out of it the first time with very minimal maintenance.
So how are we doing with our budget? Was it 50,000 total for the outdoor?
Yep,
But-
we called for $50,000. So here's where things stand to date with known costs. The Adirondack chairs and bench from Dutch Country Connections. I don't know the cost of the bench, but I do know that each of the chairs was $300. So I was saying 5 chairs, the $300 is $1,500, and probably $500 for the bench gives us about $2,000 there. So we've spent $30,644.10 to date if we want to go ahead with replacing that metal edging. The planter and the benches and tables from Park Warehouse have been ordered.
Okay. It makes sense to me to replace that because we did look at that.
Yeah.
Me and you and Vanessa. And I think we all agreed that it needed to be replaced, that it was not that was kind of sharp and not good to keep it like that.
Or really to repair, it sort of has, shifted and we can't push it back in, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So the other scope item for our site furniture was a canopy option outside the cafe space in that plaza. And after going around a bit, finally have a solution. Last week they had no hope for me. They couldn't do it. This week they're back in and reasonably on budget. So I am mentally exhausted by them, but I think these are 2 good options. Our plaza area, which is this snippet, is 10 feet deep and 20 feet across. And we're planning for 2 tables there. So they propose these 2 options. One is a cantilevered straight arm, and the other is a cantilevered arc, but they can cover roughly that 10-foot depth and span over the 20-foot width of that plaza. The arc is a little bit more expensive, and there is an additional cost and coordination for the concrete footing, which needs to be underground supporting these legs, and then the actual installation of everything. They told me a safe budget would be $10,000 for that additional coordination.
So it'd be, if it were the straight arm option, it would be roughly 23,000 to do it.
Correct.
And are both of these kind of windproof? They have ways that wind will sail through them instead of picking them up?
Yes. Yes, they actually have ratings for, I'll double check because I've read a few, but a lot of them are around the 100-mile-per-hour gust range.
That's almost safe these days.
Almost.
So the other question is, do either of them retract or are they pretty much permanent?
They're permanent in that they don't retract, but they can be, as I understand it, the shade part, not the frame, can be taken off. So that can be replaced or taken in for the winter, which would be my recommendation, because even though it's probably a little tedious to take it on and off, you'll get a better lifespan if it's not sitting out for a whole entire winter.
And if ice and snow land on it, like ice sliding off the roof, and then it could tear. The straight arm option and the arc option, I take it that those are high enough that there are no human beings who could bang their head on them.
Correct. The minimum clearance underneath that they offer is 8 feet.
That should work for Guilderland.
That works.
I think they look great, Megan. I think I'm really excited about this option. I feel like it bridges sort of the sail sort of canopy and then the gazebo thing that we were looking at. It's like if they had a baby. I really like them.
I'm happy to, especially considering how my conversations went last week when hope was all lost. And now we're back to something.
And I also think it seems less obtrusive, sort of the real estate that it needs on the ground. And the poles being closer to the building, I like as well.
Does anyone have a preference? I agree with everything you said, Vanessa, but does anyone have a preference for the arc versus the right angle?
I like the right angle, the straight arm personally. I can see it very well coordinating with the exterior look of the building. And yeah, at first I
And it's-
wanted something curved to contrast with the straightness of the building, but it's like, I don't know, it's a different look and feel, that curved one. I don't know if it's worth the $2,000 extra.
Yeah,
I
I
think
like
it's
the,
also going, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Tim, but it will look different. This doesn't have that 10-foot throw. I would think that this is only probably a 6-foot cantilever. Our cantilever is going to be longer, so it'll be even more dramatic. So I'm agreeing with you, or with all the comments. I think the straight is better because that arc is going to be very dramatic when it comes out 10 feet.
yeah, I agree with you too. And, you know, I'm sure you've observed that I make all my decisions based on money. And so saving $2,000 is good too. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think that looks nice.
And you would try, Megan, to get a color for the canopy that complements the top of the building somehow?
Yes.
Mhm.
I'll look and see what if they've sent me color options yet.
Can you go back to a picture of our building in that location?
Yes. And the sadness of winter.
Yeah, and so what I also think what stuck out to me particularly was the structure of it. That color looks like the concrete part of the building. And so I think it will fit in very nicely.
I'm going to copy this over to that image because I agree with what you're saying, but I want to make sure everybody else does. I think Vanessa was saying that, you know, this metal frame color is very similar to the line
Ah.
paneling, so it's complementary.
I
Is that what
can't
you're
tell
saying?
what the color that canopy is, but it almost looks a little green. I would not be mad at that color.
No, this is a nice, almost, you know, I can see this sitting right there, working out just great.
Yeah, it's nice.
All right, so let me move ahead with this because I just got this information this morning. So I'll develop this a little bit more, get some more information for the committee so we can look at moving ahead.
So my mental math though, that looks like it puts us slightly over our outdoor budget.
It puts us slightly over the outdoor budget.
What do we have to do about that, Kathy?
I don't know. Does it become a change order? I'm not really sure.
We don't have the ability to do change orders anymore, with the exception of the evaporative cooler project, which has a open contract right now. I guess we can update our budget summary to the board, which our last one looked something like this. So these are the updates from today, including the higher cost of the evaporative cooler as we went for the stainless steel, Helderberg wall panel costs. So our total project cost before this additional overrun of the canopy was $8,822,436.02, which I missed a 4 here. Leaves us with a balance remaining of $446,418.
We can afford it.
We can afford it. We just need to potentially
the proper permission.
update the board and say we've spent a little bit more than anticipated now that we got the actual hard costs.
Just ask for forgiveness. I can do it. Then you can forgive me and we're all set.
But does that complete what we needed to get done outside? Is that enough seating in the back? Just the, oh, never mind. It's the picnic tables are back there. My bad.
We've got picnic tables, we've got those benches and Adirondack chairs, and then we've also got what's existing back there already, which obviously you may not want to keep everything, but what you've got some of the original things, if they're still in good condition or can be updated, then you've got lots of different seating to choose from at the rear plaza.
No shade in the rear.
You do have the trellis.
Oh, I missed that. That's something oh, no, that exists.
That's existing.
We also have a lot of trees for now, although they may eventually disappear if my understanding of the recreational footpath ever comes true, that I believe the town is interested in.
Oh, from the former golf course there, the
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah.
Be back on this side.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully. So
And actually, you know, I love trees, but if that path gets built, it will really benefit our building, obviously in patron usage, but also if the pine trees come down, they are a significant cause of problems on our roof.
Yeah.
So the needles.
Okay.
Okay. Going back to the budget, once we get these final numbers for our canopy, then we can update our budget and see where we are in terms of cost overage, as maybe it's minor. I will update everyone shortly as soon as I get more information. I had one design aesthetic question for you all with this very dynamic white page. It was just a placeholder reminder.
I like it.
We have a millwork contractor building the counter for the cafe space. They recently reached out to me and they said, you have 2 different wood stains in that room. Which color would you prefer? Now, in a lot of the areas of the library proper, we were updating the stain color to be a little bit richer and more towards that cherry warm color rather than the cool tone. However,
Yeah.
in the cafe space, in that Norman skill room, we have the existing doors and the existing windows that all have that lighter color trim. So my thought is, even though it sort of breaks the rule where we were trying to update all your stain colors, we should probably keep it that lighter color, which for comparison is like this wood paneling on the top of the adult collection area.
I guess that space kind of breaks the rule too, doesn't it, Megan?
Yes, well, all of our spaces do. We sort of kept like the built-in things that existed in the building lighter, and then we were trying to get that warmer tone in our furniture.
I'm
So
glad you're used to me by now.
So then you're saying we'd actually be continuing that if you consider the counter like a built-in. It would be the lighter color?
So our info desk and our circulation desk are the darker color in this space.
Oh.
So if we follow the rule, the cafe counter would be dark. But it's a separate space. That's why I wanted to bring it to the committee and get everyone's point of view.
So another thought related to that before people do any kind of voting is that it's possible and I think desirable to, when we get this cafe open, for the cafe operator to also be selling used books. And these shelving units that are in the photo that you're seeing right now, there are like 6 or 8 of them that are kind of spares at this point. So I could see them being in the Norman Skill room as part of the cafe, or even just 2 or 3 of them or 4 of them. So I think it's highly likely we're already going to have mixed wood tones in the room. So I'm good either way, really. Although the shelves in question are movable and the counter and the windowsills are not. So maybe one principle is to make the non-movable things the lighter color and the movable things could stay this color. Carrie?
So the windowsills in the cafe, the window framing is
the lighter color.
Lighter.
And the doors are too, right?
Yep, the doors from the lobby spaces are the lighter color.
Okay, so now I'm switching my thought. I think it should be darker, like the circulation desk.
If there's going to be stacks in there, then yeah, I wouldn't have even brought this question to you guys. I wasn't thinking about having these similar stacks be in there.
Yeah, I think they should it should match the shelving.
We'll follow the rule. anybody take exception to that?
I like it.
I like the mixed wood, quite honestly. I think it makes it look warmer.
I
And
was
since we are live, I'll take the opportunity to say that, you know, some of the early criticism of the remodeled library looking cold, I think is always thought was unfounded, but harder to argue. The library is looking fantastic, Tim. Been in there several times in the last couple of weeks, and it's really just, it's coming to life and is really enjoyable to be in.
So that brings up a great question. Megan, keep this photo up while I ask this question. So in my mind, and I've conferred with Megan just a little bit, you know, this space, I can't show you, but the space where we were planning to put the mural that is welcome in 60 different languages.
Yep.
We went through a lot of research and, you know, we are still not at a stage where we'd be confident, you know, tattooing that or printing that stuff on the wall because we might make mistakes. But what I would like to do, and I've been trying to figure out who to ask, and so this group is better than any group really to ask. I would like to, there's 25% of the languages have questions associated with them, and most of it is just hyper preparedness, like triple and quadruple checking. I would like to take the languages where we have questions and use social media to crowdsource. Is this the right way to say welcome in Turkish? I've tried, and that's an example, but I've tried, you know, university language departments, and I've tried trying to get to the families who speak these languages through the school district, and that's kind of a no-no. But you know, the internet is very powerful, so I would like to have that graphic be alive. And you know, if 60 languages, you know, my goal would be to use 60 languages, but if only 57 can be proven to be correct, I think the impact is largely the same. You know, there is a symbolism in using the 60 because those are the exact 60 languages currently spoken in the school district, but next year it'll probably be 62, and then the year after that it'll probably be 65, you know. So I'd like to go ahead with it, and the part I'm asking about is social media. Like, are people comfortable with me using that and just saying, you know, we're looking for an accurate translation of the word welcome in Turkish. Is this it? You know?
I think you need to clarify it a little more, Tim, and I apologize for interrupting. When I was
No,
trying
that's
to
fine.
research about welcome in these 60 different languages, in a few languages, because I am not a student of language, I'm still working on my English skills. There was a noun welcome and a verb welcome, or some different spelling. So if you're going to crowdsource it, which I don't take exception to it all, I think you should just make sure you're explaining that it's a welcome greeting.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Where I was stumbling, which was I don't know which welcome I want to use in
Ah.
Farsi or something like that.
So
Yeah, like welcome to our library. I mean, I think you'll have that context in your ask, right, Tim? Like when
Yeah.
the problem is when you put it in like a translation tool or you search it and you're searching a single word,
Exactly.
there's no context. I think it's a great idea. And did you try like the Rise Center?
I haven't yet, and that's a great idea.
Yeah,
So,
it might be able to help, or at least connect you to some native language speakers.
mhm.
It's not a true 60 languages either, Tim. I apologize, because some people listed that they spoke Farsi, but other people listed that they were of Persian descent. And as now I'm now a little bit of an expert. The dialect or the language in Persia is Farsi. So that 60 really isn't a true 60. There's some interpretation in it. So
Okay.
sorry, not to steal your thunder with the 60, but I don't want you to
No,
be
no,
disappointed
that's
later either.
Yep, that's fine. That's a good distinction, and the kind of thing that, you know, it's a library, so people will ask questions like that, you know.
One other just sort of random question, Megan, and in our multiple visits to the library in the last week or so, the fireplace which is like one of my favorite spots in the library. You know, I underestimated that there would become a time in the season where it wouldn't be appropriate to have it running. Do those sorts of inserts have like lights or anything that can like give it the ambiance without the gas consumption and the heat output?
Let me look. 'Cause I think you can just turn the stones on, but I'm not, or those glass, I call it stones with the glass at the bottom. Let me look and see if we can just have those on for at least a little bit of color and activity.
So you can, and please do look, Megan, but I believe I heard from Lou the other day that the problems we were having for so long starting the fire were solved by putting the fire and the lights on the same switch. So if that's the case, then the answer would be no. You just have one, you just have fire and light, or nothing. And for my personal taste, like, I'm glad we solved the problem because now we can turn on the fireplace, but I really don't like the lights at all, you know, like, I think it should just be fire. Fire with purple lights around it is not what I want to sit at on a wintry night and drink hot cocoa or the beverage of my choice, but fire is, you know. Lime green lights, not there either. Cherry
Wait,
pink,
it can be lime green?
you can do like almost any thing in the spectrum. So
What about orange? So they just look like glowing embers.
that's nice. That's nice. So I don't know, but I think we might be into a situation now where it's one switch to turn the whole thing on. So,
Okay. I like
Was
your
there
style,
anything,
Natalie.
was there anything else, Megan, or we pretty much covered it?
Well, there was one more that Tim and the staff have discussed.
you want me to introduce it, Megan, or?
Sure.
Okay, so you probably have a floor plan you can show, like, I think the very first.
I can go all the way up to my first one, yep.
Yeah. So if you orient yourself to the front door being, you know, in the top center, and then you turn into the reading room area, we, despite the fact I'm disagreeing with you now, Vanessa, we're up to about 15 or so complaints that the entry into the building doesn't look welcoming. So we have worked with Megan and some software to look at ways of moving furniture around in the main reading room area. And Megan, if you have that photo you were gonna go to of what it looks like when you walk right in. So there's nothing, there are no tables. There's one chair here down in the lower left corner. And so if you put yourself up around the skylight there and look down at the room, do you have a view like that, Megan? Okay, so now you see the main grayed out kind of pathway between the front door and the entrance to the youth section. Everything that you see in orange, blue, and green is movable. And I believe the first row of shelves south of the walkway is movable. So in general, we're working, like if you notice, you come in through the front door and you turn immediately left, we've designed a completely different layout than you currently see using existing furniture. And at one point we were talking about taking out the wall between the Tawacentha room and the new book area, but that wasn't popular with this group. Staff, you know, in a nutshell, staff liked it and board did not. And that's fine. It's a rather extreme step and it takes the roomness out of the board meeting room. But at any rate, everything you see north of, Megan, could you kind of draw that line? Everything north of a certain point is movable? It's right along there.
Here.
Yeah. Yep. So in general, we are playing with the idea of moving things over to the right in order to create a more comfortable space right inside the front door. But as part of that, we've come up with the idea of getting rid of the laminate walkway and making the entire room carpeting, because then we would have like, all this stuff is movable, but it's only movable in these limited spots as long as there's a walkway. But if the walkway were to disappear, then the entire main reading room becomes customizable at any time. I don't know if it's possible if you had any images that would help explain that concept, Megan, but yeah, that one would. See, the majority of the room is the walkway, or at least a third of the room is the walkway. And you're creating this walkway, like, I'm not trying to be critical of the architecture, like I think we have a great library compared to what we used to. But the door to the children's area is not at the end of this walkway, and it's not really apparent to anyone as they face this walkway how to get to the adult reference desk or the teen room or the children's area. And we think if we had more flexibility, i.e., there'd be many ways to get from this end of the building to the other end of the building instead of one main monolithic way, we think we'd have a lot more design flexibility over time. Is that a good description, Megan, or anything you would add to it?
That is very consistent with what you and I have discussed and the staff have discussed. I think, back during the pre-referendum design things, when we were having these conversations about a pathway leading to this space, the pathway was supposed to help intuitively guide folks to the children's room and the information desk in the teen room without necessarily seeing them or being on a dead straight path. Because this building is so large, we wanted folks to experience all of it. One of the big selling points of this change in layout was to actually sort of accentuate this vaulted space, which nobody seemed to notice existed back before the renovations. So we were trying to get, natural light down into browsing spaces that didn't have direct windows outside.
And would you lose some of that if we made this carpet?
I think you lose a little bit of that linearity, noticing the spine of the skylight, but it's for whatever staff thinks is best for patrons.
I have a couple of thoughts. One, it also seems that the pathway long term, if you're sort of guiding a primary walkway visually and with materials, that's definitely a more durable material, less likely to like get wet and stained in winter months and just over the years, like just wear and tear. I do actually like that it mimics the vaulted ceiling. I have always kind of questioned the bookshelf at the end that blocks the fish tank. I guess I'm just wondering, like, I'm not opposed to moving the furniture around or sort of reimagining it, but is there like an in-between step, like a layout to try that's different before taking up the material that's already been installed? That's this, right? This doesn't require moving.
Correct.
And I just feel like it's worth it, in my opinion, to try that before basically throwing out brand new flooring material from, I'm not minimizing the feedback, but you always hear more from dissatisfied people than satisfied people. And I'm not sure we know sort of what the proportion is. And we haven't even lived with it for long enough for, I think, people to get used to it and have an opinion that's just not a rejection of change. I don't know. It feels like a drastic step. I'd love to see this step before pulling up the floor.
I like that.
I'm sorry.
I agree with you,
interrupt
Vanessa.
you for a little bit. I agree with Vanessa and I think that it is, a drastic step, but it is 3 minutes before 1. I do have a conference for my work, so I actually have to step away, and I didn't want to be rude and just drop off. So
Never
I have
rude.
to go.
You're not rude.
Thank you, Narina.
Completely reasonable and
thanks.
understanding.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. So
Bye.
I'm fine with your concept, and I heard Kathy say that she likes that too, Vanessa. And then my question for Megan is, so just to inform, especially Kathy and Vanessa, who are members of the Design Steering Committee, and also Elish, who's thankfully stayed with us during the meeting. The cost of pulling up the floor tile and replacing it with the same carpet is estimated between $16,000 and $20,000. And so obviously it's a significant cost. My question for you, Megan, is, and you know, maybe it's unanswerable, but for how many months or years is the same carpet going to be available?
I don't have a crystal ball, but most of them usually are available for a good number of years, or they can be special ordered because they don't, throw out the design information. They just don't regularly fabricate it.
Oh, okay. So there's not a particular urgency to, one thing I can tell you is even though we have like 5 times more storage in the current building than in the old one, we don't have enough to store that much carpet. So
the other concern with taking out this material is that the pattern of the 4 planks turned, they run north-south and then east-west. Recreating that in this space would throw off the pattern a little bit. And also our flooring installer was concerned that the dye lot is maybe different because it's going to be 2 years later ordering this carpet to infill this, so it might look a little bit different. Not terrible, but he wanted to make sure that we were aware.
So just for full disclosure for everybody making this decision though, I've never been a library board member, but I've worked with this library board for 8 years, probably about 50 different people. And the idea of spending $16,000 to $20,000, quite frankly, is easy to do now because of the great bids that we got because of COVID, and will be hard to do once this loan is closed. So I think that's a factor that ought to be mentioned. I'm still leaning towards Vanessa's suggestion, but I think in functionality, it might mean that, and I know this isn't what you intended, Vanessa, but it might mean that we're always going to have this walkway. If the carpet can't be matched or whatever, it's a tough choice to make. There's pros and cons to both sides of it, but
well, I mean, I guess my response to that would be, at some point, I would imagine carpet gets updated in the library,
that's true.
Which would make it an opportunity to change all of the flooring. I just actually think, although that might be a bargain compared to what that cost might be in the future when prices go back up, $16,000 to $20,000 to sort of reorganize furniture in a brand new space, to me, is not acceptable and not something I would support.
Sure, and I'm not trying to argue with you, but at some point the carpet will be changed. But
right, and then we can evaluate a different.
Well, sorry, but there's another clause. No board member or director changed the carpet from 1992 until this carpet. So you're talking about 30 years.
Which is about average for all the libraries we've seen, unfortunately. But maybe you'll have a more proactive board because, updating finishes is a nice way to show that your library isn't a static.
Well, actually, so Megan, a question there. So that layout that you showed, the new layout that I was saying, like, let's just see how this works without being so drastic. How quickly can this be done? Because it doesn't mean that we can't revisit after this is done to see. It just seems to me that it would be really important to try this before going sort of nuclear and pulling up the floor.
So reorienting furniture, these stacks, those are all mobile units. So it's really just staff manpower to rotate or shift things around. The blue items were some just additional like backless chairs or benches so that we've just got some more seating interspersed in the collection. So that might have a few week lead time, but that doesn't change the overall effect of adjusting the shelving to see how that feels right off the bat.
And then the question about just immediate, like when you come into the library, it not feeling welcoming. I never understood what space people are referring to, and that they're not referring to the vestibule or like sort of the lobby area, because those, you don't have a lot of choices with. They're talking about when you turn into here and they see books, they want to not see books in a library.
Yeah, I think it might help to remember the old library to address this question. In the old library,
I
when you
literally
walked in,
can't. Do you ever have that problem? I literally
Oh, okay.
can't.
well, I can help you with that. Like in the old library, you would see 5 or 6 people working at the circulation desk instead of 2. And you also would have a sight line to the reference desk. It was like 40 feet away and you'd see 2 or
Yeah,
3 people
okay.
there. So
I
there were
remember a little bit.
people, and now there's not people really, like, because we built the new circuit department for security and also for self-check. So, and these pictures are useful for kind of, this is what
I
people
couldn't
are
find one of
lamenting
the circ.
is gone. Yeah, so.
Tim,
Yeah,
we had what, 15 comments that
Yeah.
people didn't like it? I mean, that's not really very many. I mean, to
so my
completely
training
redo the
about
space?
social behavior, which is, well, hang on, my training about social behavior, which is not extensive, I don't have a sociology degree, but I think when you're talking about a large institution, if 15 people have said it, it probably means 150 people are thinking it. Now, admittedly, you have to say it if you're thinking of it and you want any kind of change, but I think it's a widespread opinion.
Well, but I mean, I have to actually disagree. I actually think you're more likely in a brand new space to hear from only one perspective, and that would be the dissatisfied perspective. And I've heard like quite a number of people just personally who are not likely to make it, and you're probably less likely to notice it or make note of it when people say nice things. So if we were tallying it, I'm not sure that this skews in the direction of dissatisfaction. Also in that last picture, I noticed a plant. And I think there are other things that what I was trying to comment and compliment the library on earlier is just having time in the space over time. Those additional elements are coming in. You know, we still have things that could be put on the walls, plants, all sorts of other things that will bring the library back to sort of its comfiness, but that happens over time. And I'm not sure it's a symptom of the furniture layout. I do think having a seating area, and as people come back to the library, the last several times I've been, there've been a significant number of cars in the parking lot, which makes the library feel alive when you're in it. If you come and it's empty, there's not much the furniture layout's going to do to help that.
I agree with everything you said.
I agree as well. And Natalie just pointed out that during that referendum process or pre-referendum process, what people were commenting on that they wanted to see was that bookstore feel, not the endless, tall stacks that weren't really browser friendly. One of the big comments that we saw was that people coming in this entryway, because the original entry to the library was straight on access with those sliding doors, was that they did meet that staff at the circ desk, but then once they had to sort of make a U-turn to here to get to this open area, it wasn't very user friendly. It wasn't intuitive to navigate because every aisle looked the same, every chair looked the same, and so you couldn't see where one collection ended and where another one began. And there were really no sight lines here either to see what was beyond. So that was, one of the big design reasons for changing the doors and how you walked into the library proper. I also, can I just give my personal feelings? Because I thought
Of
about
course.
this a great
Of course.
deal. Because obviously, I mean, I'm predisposed to like things, but I was thinking, because I am, despite what you may think, a very introverted person. So when I think about like standing in this space or walking into the library here, if it looks like this without people, I'm probably going to do what I've seen patrons do, which is go down to this aisle under the low ceiling and get off the main pathway, because I don't ever, literally, I never want anyone to look at me. That's how my baseline way of feeling is. But if there were 6 other people browsing in here, I wouldn't have that compulsion to go sort of run into the other stacks. I would have no problem walking down that aisle. So this might be true for a lot of people, that I don't want to be the only person in this 80-foot long corridor of stacks and space when I could just, hide away somewhere else. So either way, I mean, in terms of the design intent and collection layout, I think all options are feasible and will work well, but there's just different ways people use spaces depending on how other people are in it as well. That's my
So can I gotta jump to a work meeting and I'm just kind of crashing y'all's thing. But as someone who never experienced the old library and now I'm seeing the two comparisons, so I don't have that like buyer's remorse. I don't know. The other one did like visually look more appealing. This looks more like chaotic to me, where like stuff's kind of sticking out of the walkway. And it's, I don't know. That's the thing that like when I've walked in, I thought it was not that I like, ooh, I have a problem, but it is a little sterile, right? Like I think, you know, like Vanessa was saying with like some plants, there's like zero color in here. And I've gone to other libraries where it's like colorful and bright, and that to me was more like welcoming or had that more like community feel, where this feels like very, I don't know, that this seems like we went like modern, right? So but I don't know, without some of those cool elements. So to me this almost looks old even though it's new. That's my just my literal 2 cents, but I think maybe that might help warm stuff up if there's more like color somewhere, anywhere. That's why I was like, I don't know if this is feasible, but if instead of the mural being all the way in the back where people might not even get that far in the library, it might be cool to paint on the walkway where people are literally like reading it as they're going along. And that could be a place to pop in some color or something like that, make a visually interesting focal point right there.
I know that Peter had an idea, which was to put like banners, you know, like say like seasonal banners, like you know, spring or fall or summer, that sort of thing. You know, if you wanted to change them, you know,
That's a nice idea.
because that would bring a pop of color in there,
Mhm.
but you wouldn't have to have it like permanent.
Yep. I think overall, Vanessa's idea that we should live with, we should make some changes and live with them um, is better than just changing now because we can change now. I think we could probably change later too, if we really wanted to, you know? So let's see how it goes, has won the day with me. At the moment, I don't think it will be popular with the staff who lives in this space for 35 hours a week, but you know, and I think Alicia's comment is basically the exact same comment as the 12 or 15 that we've seen. But at any rate, I'm perfectly happy to try just moving furniture around and you know, pops of color. And on a related note, we're putting together a little group with 3 or 4 staff members and 2 members of the Guilderland Historical Society to work on photos and like, for example, where we put the Crounce House door, where we will be putting it, and the fireplace, we need interpretive labels that tell the story of what those buildings are. So we're starting to work on that, and some of what I mean, we haven't met yet, but some of our ideas include pops of color, for example, along this left-hand wall in between the various study rooms. So there are ways to solve the problem without spending 16,000 on carpet, which I would also note doesn't necessarily solve the problem. It's just one solution that we've thought of, but it's not time for it, I think, is what Vanessa kind of convinced me of. So
I'm also thinking too, I wonder, you know, just on the walls or just different display devices, contraptions. It's really lovely having the student artwork on display for the show. And so there's nothing that would prevent us from installing or including elements that would allow you to have like a rotating display of student art. You have the one big show a year, but you could feature work throughout the year, throughout the library from schools. And they definitely have those like frames that you can like, that have little doors and you like put, you know, you can switch it out. And and even if there was like, I don't know, if we got an additional display case or shelf or something for 3-dimensional objects or art, they could be local posters. I mean, I just think there are a lot, to me, it just looks like you're still moving in and haven't put like the makeup on. And it's hard for me to judge the space or hold that against the space, because to me, it obviously looks like you're still putting in the personalized items. That's what I would really like to see.
And I think that'll help a lot with the, Elise used the word sterile, which I hadn't heard anyone else use, but it rang true for me. But once you have a couple plants, once you have some posters or some paintings on the wall, maybe a few like unbreakable vases on top of these shelves, something to break up the plane of the top of all of those shelves. I think this will be greatly improved. So.
Yeah. I think the best example is the children's space. Like that, it's like all of the extra little features and stuff have started to go in, and it's starting to look really fantastic. I don't think anybody would complain about that space. It just needs to sort of trickle out in an age appropriate way.
There you go.
Spaces.
Yep. Okay.
Me.
So,
So is there anything else?
No, that was all I had for today.
Okay. Any other comments?
No, Megan, is the paneling in the I always forget the
Elderberg,
names.
right?
Elderberg room, is that on hold until after the show, or like
Yes, they're obviously, as soon as we placed our order, their fabrication times got extended, so
okay.
it's scheduled to go in when that is complete. And what else are we scheduling around, Tim? Now I forget. There's another thing, but we've got it on the calendar.
We have 10 days of early voting coming up in June 18th to the 28th. So it'll be, and then the summer reading grand opening is on, I think, the 29th, might be the 30th. So it's looking like early July to do the Helderberg room. And presumably, based on my previous discussions with Megan, presumably we'll have the material by then and install less than 2 weeks. Correct, Megan?
Yes.
Okay.
They were asking for 2 weeks, but they think it'll take much less.
Okay.
I was
Yep.
just curious.
And was it in a design steering that we talked about the chiller timetable?
We shouldn't talk about that right now.
We should not, you say?
Nope.
Okay. Because we already have, is that what you're saying, or?
Just because things have changed, and I don't want to tell you any bad news if I can tell you nothing at all, because it resolves itself.
Oh, okay. So
We'll say nothing for the moment.
yeah, okay. If the board members are okay with that, I'm fine with that. We'll place
Okay.
our trust in you.
We were looking great. We had a meeting last week with the contractor, the
That was
engineer,
it.
and everybody was, everything's in production, on schedule. They were thinking early June, and then I got an email Monday that said the variable fan drives are back ordered until September.
Oh,
But everybody's working. The engineer's working on his end, which he doesn't even need to do. The contractor's looking for other distributors. So there's a few options to consider. One is also to change the location of where those drives go. They were trying to keep them outside so they didn't take up so much space in the mechanical or electric room, but we might just need to circle back and consider putting them back interior. So there's a lot of moving pieces right now. So I'm going to come back to everyone when we have a good plan. And it might be everything's fine. They found a new distributor, but
maybe we can just go to another library and steal what we need.
I don't know.
Also, just to be more optimistic, thank you for that report. Aren't there like temporary air conditioners that you can bring in to cool certain spaces?
Not that you would want to afford.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I was thinking like one that you could park in the exterior and fan in air conditioning. I guess there are portable air conditioning units.
And they're probably rentable, I would think, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. So if worse came to worse, like we have 2 main adult seating areas, one by the fireplace and one by the fish tank. So we could air condition those areas, so.
Or
we'll have
move
some
some of the
options.
adult-sized tables into the children's room, because the addition will have air conditioning.
There you go.
Separate system. So it's obviously not ideal, but it's an option.
Okay.
All right. So if there's nothing else for the design committee,
I think so.
we should probably be adjourned at 1:17.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye-bye.